Christ-like figure on a friend of his.
Yeah. You know what, to be honest with you, when you look at Bishop Zondo's ministry, there was so much substance as it relates to his evangelistic approach to preaching. You understand? When you listen to his tapes when he started and all of that, you can literally tell that there's that genuine
pulpit
hunger, to really serve the Lord and preach the word of God. Unfortunately, what happens, the complexities of running church ministry is that we now look for things that makes ministry easy. You know what I mean? And more comfortable. And when you start dabbing into these things, what happens is it compromises your content, because intent determines content. There's no way you will maintain the purity of your content if your intention has changed. The day you look for ways to make your life easy or the work of ministry easy, and it compromises the one you're ministering to, you create forms of help that brings no help but looks like help in order to make your life easy. What happens is you are now going to compromise the purity of the content you carried in the first place, because intent determines content. You cannot necessarily protect your content from being defiled if your intentions is defiled.
Okay, so this is going back into relating to the earlier messages that you heard.
That I've heard. It was a hardcore presentation of the person of Jesus and the gospel. But as time goes on, because we have all of these experiences in ministry as you're building, you then realize that this is actually not easy.
Yeah.
There is labor to ministry, there's work to ministry. And consequently, what most people do is they find ways to make their life easy by compromising the well-being of the congregation. So you get more out of the congregation than they get out of you. That's making ministry easy. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's why maybe let me use this narrative to drive this point through. You look at why Jesus was angry at the temple. Most people think that Jesus was angry because they were selling outside the temple. But that was not an issue, because remember, people were coming from all walks of life.
It's written in the Bible to say if you were traveling.
Yeah. So you would not bring your sheep or your lamb for such a long distance. So what you would do is you would get to the temple, and then probably if you're using foreign currency, you go through the money changes and then go get an animal to present to the priest. But the thing with that is now these guys, money changers, what they would do, instead of giving you 15 rand for $1, they would not give you 15 rand, they would give you 10 rand. So it's the exploitation that Jesus had a problem with. And these guys selling animals, what they would do is they would give you a sickly kind of a sheep, knowing that it will be rejected by the priest, and therefore you will have to go back and buy again. You understand? It's all about buying again. You need this oil, it will finish, and you have to buy again. It's a form of help that's not help at all. And the reason why I'm saying this is because most of these preachers, called of God, anointed of God, were compromised along the way because they started creating forms of help that was not really help, so in order to make their ministry easy.
And also the point, if we might sneak this in there, Malachi is actually even in that point. It's to say, how am I your father and you've dishonored me?
Exactly.
By what you've brought. Because people sometimes don't understand that that's what the system in the temple had become. These guys had found a way to profit at every single level of thingy. I remember archaeologists finding one of the high priest's houses. They said this guy used to live in lavish thing. And his kids were known to be businessmen between that period. And they was benefiting at all this system.
And money was coming from who? The worshipper.
Yeah.
You
had just come to give his sacrifice. But now,
who's trying to come and worship God is being exploited. You are actually exploited in the presence of God. And that's why Jesus said, my Father's house is a house of prayer. You understand? Not a den of thieves where God's people are going to be robbed. You see, intent determines content. When your intention is to exploit the worshiper, your content will be compromised. You cannot maintain the purity of the presentation of the gospel if your intention is not correct. The reason why they don't care, Ricky, about the question of doctrine is because fixing the doctrine means they have to confront
their intention
systems they have put in place to push their own agenda. You follow what I'm saying?
That's something. Something. It goes back to the video we spoke about earlier to say the reason why the world doesn't want to, when we were speaking about the shooting that was happening on yesterday's video, the reason why the world does not want to address the issue of the heart with the subject of the evils of society is that it will actually eventually come back to them because it addresses the issue of the heart.
Of the heart, yeah.
It's not just that person. The issue is that even you have that same disease that person might have thinking. And so this is just a highlight, guys. It's also to just kind of paint the theology out of it and also make theology part of the Christian conversation. I think we've gotten used to talking church. We do this.
I love what you say when you say the biblification of the Christian mindset. I think that's actually needed in the church more than ever before. I actually believe that the season that has passed with all of these things that happen on the scene, people being raised from the dead and all of this corruption and all of this
over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years was actually a preparation for Christians to sit down and say, let's be sober. And let's have a conversation and let our Christian journey with God be based on the Word of God. Everything that we do has to be Christocentric, centered on the person of Christ. If it's contrary to the person, the gospel, and the covenant of grace and Jesus, we don't want it.
Yeah, but the church is the one that must say that. And so this gives you a highlight, guys, of the in-depth of which we can go. You can see how he approaches the subject. Amir would have just laughed about it.
I really enjoy watching you. It's crazy.
I've just laughed about it and say, Chief, it's not there. And so, but you can see that the dynamic of how he brings it in and how I approach it. And so you can see at the end of the day, it makes theology the center of every single part of our conversation. And so that podcast, when it starts up, we're going to start uploading it in a different thingy. And so
different channel.
I'll definitely give you a hint. We don't want the podcast to be on this channel because we already have one long format on this channel, which is the live stream where we discuss and everything. So the podcast will have its own channel so that it can have its own algorithm. We don't want to influence the algorithm too much. We already have the live stream, so it already does its own thing. You will notice that the live streams don't get as much attention as the daily videos because the algorithm on this channel is centered around things. So on this video, we wanted to just do that small little breakdown. I had to surprise him with
I was not ready for this.